Visaragham Pratijanur Yuvadvam Dvam Tachcha Paricharitumara Dabilashi Sarupam Shri Rupam Saganamihatasya Grajamapi Sputang Prena Nityam Smaranamatatvam Srinumana. Translation. My dear mind, please hear me. If you are eager to gain residence in Braja on the platform of Ragatmika Bhakti, and if you desire to obtain the direct service of the eternally youthful divine couple, Sri Radha Krishna, then birth after birth, always distinctly remember and bow down with great love to Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, and his elder brother Sri Sanatana Goswami, and all other associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who are the recipients of his mercy. So the third instruction, he's putting a question forward to his mind. Yadhi icha abhasam. If you desire to live where? Braja Bhuvi, to live in Vrindavan Dham. Live in Vrindavan Dham, how? Saragam. Saragam means with raga. And our commentators say this is, to live in Braja means to live in Braja with Ragatmika Bhakti. Also, Yuva Twandvam Taschet Paricharitamara Abhadashi. And mind, if you desire to serve the Yuva Twandvam, the divine couple, Radha Krishna, directly. So two desires are being mentioned here. Desire to live in Braja with Ragatmika Bhakti, and also the desire to render service to the divine couple, Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. Someone may ask, why the necessity of living in Brajadam? One can serve Radha Krishna anywhere. That is very popular talking point in our institutions because, perhaps management is afraid that if everyone really deeply embraced the glories of Sri Vrindavan Dham, or let's say deeply embraced the essence of all advice given by Sri Rupa Goswami and Upadesha Amrita, amongst which Tishtam Braja, living in Braja, is one of the essence of all advices. If we were to deeply embrace that instruction, we may all run off to Braja and leave our services and our responsibilities in the different parts of the world where we're serving. So then a very nice and popular talking point is that one can serve Radha Krishna anywhere. But here two desires are being instructed to the mind. A desire to live in Braj and a desire to serve the divine couple in Braja with Ragatmika Bhakti. So why these two are linked together? Srila Prabhupada writes in the 4th canto, chapter 8, I think it's like verse number 42 or 43. I can look it up, it's around there. I often bring this up. But there, Srila Prabhupada himself writes that if one is a neophyte devotee, then it is best that he serves in Vrindavan Dham. The context is Dhruva Maharaj is doing his tapasya in Mahavan, one of the forests of Vrindavan. So Prabhupada's commenting about the speciality of the holy places. The holy places have a numen. You know this word numen? Numen means like the spiritual quality of an object or substance or entity. So the spiritual aspect, just like, for example, in Christianity also, and Vaishnavism, we have what's called the Tadiya. The Tadiya is considered more worshipable even than Vishnu himself. Aradhanam sarvesham Vishnu aradhanam param tasmat parataram devi tadiyanam samarchana. Shastras inform us that of all forms of worship, the worship of Vishnu is supreme. But superior to worship of Vishnu is the worship of the Tadiya. So Tadiya means basically anything related to Vishnu or Krishna. And 4 Tadiyas are identified by Sri Rupa Goswami and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Vaishnava is one of the Tadiyas. Srimad Bhagavatam is another one of the Tadiyas. Tosi Maharani is another one, and there's a 4th one. I want to say maybe the deity or maybe the Dham. I don't remember the fourth one. In any case, this Tadiya worship, or even this worship of the relics in Christianity, considered even superior to Vishnu worship, because it has a certain numen to it. So this word numen means like a spiritual quality to it, the spiritual quality of the object. If looked at with just material eyes, it just looks like material, but it has a numen, its own special power by which the self is benefited or attains shreyas. So Prabhupada, speaking about the numen of Sri Vrindavan Dham, says that the neophytes, they should actually go and live in Vrindavan Dham. But if you're a devotee preacher like Narada Muni, who can withstand hellish conditions, then you may live anywhere in the universe. But if you're not like Narada Muni with the power to withstand hellish conditions, then you should live in Vrindavan Dham. So Srila Prabhupada, if you're a neophyte devotee. So it's just interesting. If these sorts of instructions were underscored by everyone in leadership, then we might all just run over to Vrindavan Dham and renounce our responsibilities in our respective locales. And that wouldn't be healthy for the Krishna consciousness movement. Never mind if we're not serving the movement all that much, but we'll definitely drop that excuse if we were pushed to move to Vrindavan. In any case, move to Vrindavan. This is the essence of all advice. Tisham Bridget, live in Braj. So those who are developing, or following the mood of the Brijvasis, Raganuga Bhakti, then the desire to live in Braja with Ragatmika Bhakti is one of the desires. And this desire is, in some sense, necessary, along with the desire to serve Radha and Krishna. So we might say, or the institution might say, well, we can serve Radha and Krishna anywhere. But the question is, can we? When Sri Radha and the gopis, they meet Krishna in Kurukshetra, this got brought up incidentally yesterday also. There, the whole scene is that Krishna's Dwarkadish Krishna. He looks like Dwarkadish Krishna. And so Radha is seeing that Krishna is saying, it is the same Krishna, but outside of Vrindavan Dham, there's no full reach of the happiness possible there without Krishna and Braj. So the whole Rath Yatra, one of the elements of the meditation of Rath Yatra is bringing Krishna from Dwarka, represented as the temple which Jagannath stays in, and dragging him by the ropes of lava to Gambhira, which represents Vrindavan Dham. This is one of the main meditations during the Rath Yatra. Or as Damodar Maharaj was saying, because here in New York, we're about to have our Rath Yatra. We take the deities from not upstate, but uptown New York, which is like the sort of the posh, rich area of New York, down to Washington Square Park. It doesn't fit as a perfect analogy, but the idea, people in Washington Square Park are a lot, let's say, simpler, whereas the people in uptown New York are like a little bit more bougie and rich and so on. So bringing Krishna from Dwarka to Braj, this is one of the main meditations. World worship of Krishna and the ways that the gopis want to worship Krishna and the Brijvasis want to worship Krishna cannot take place outside of Braja. So the desire to be in Braja and to be benefited by the numen of Braja, because Krishna's performed so many pastimes there, these are strong desires in those who are following on the path of Rock Mark. They're indispensable desires. This sort of desire has the most coherence for those on the path of Rock Bhajan. So yadhichar abhasam braja bhuvi sarag. So if you desire to live in Braja with Ragatmika Bhakti, Sarag. So Saraga means with Ragatmika Bhakti. So this term Ragatmika Bhakti is a term that specifically applies to the Brijvasis. This came up in our class some days ago, so it should be clarified here. Srila Rupa Goswami and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, when he defines Raganuga Bhakti specifically, he defines Raganuga Bhakti as Viranjantam Abhibhyaktam Brajavasi Janadishu. Ragatmikam Anushritaye Sa Ragunugochate. So Raganuga Uchate. So this is called as Raganuga Bhakti. What is called as Raganuga Bhakti? Raganuga Bhakti is Ragatmikam Anushritaye. So Raganuga Bhakti means Anushrita. Anushrita means to, basically it means to follow or meant to emulate. And sometimes you can even say to imitate. Anushrita, this word. To emulate, imitate, to follow in the wake, sometimes it's translated as. To follow the Ragatmika Bhaktas. So who are they? This Ragatmika Bhakti Sri Rupa Goswami informs us in the same verse. Viranjantam abhivyaktam brajavasi janadishu. This Ragatmika Bhakti manifests distinctly. Abhivyaktam, manifests distinctly in the resonance of Vrindavan Dham. Brajavasi janadishu. So to follow or imitate or emulate the Ragatmika Bhaktis, whose Bhakti is made distinctly manifest in the Brij Bhaktis, this is known as Raganuga Bhakti. So this term Ragatmika is a term, at least in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, that is used specifically to describe the devotees of Krishna's devotees in Vrindavan Dham. Ishte swarasik hiraga paramavishta bhavet. Tamayi yobavet bhakti sa ragatmika uchita. The last line I'm kind of forgetting. So this is a definition of ragatmika bhakti. If Raganuga Bhakti is to emulate the Ragatmika Bhaktis, what is Ragatmika Bhakti? So then that is defined. So the spontaneous, swarasiki, just like the rivers flowing towards the sea. So the mind senses everything flows towards Krishna without obstruction. This is called swarasiki, natural or spontaneous. Swarasiki paramavishita bhavet. The spontaneous love thirst. So love thirst here means prema trishna. Love thirst, the prema trishna. So when you have prema trishna, if you have thirst for anything, that causes an absorption in the object, right? We all have this experience. We get thirsty for the material things, right? We have passion for the material things. In fact, one of the qualities of the Rajaguna mentioned by Krishna Bhagavad Gita is trishna. So trishna means thirst. Incidentally, in the 2022, young people, they often use this word to refer to their lesser desires. They say, I'm thirsty. This is a specific word used to refer to their lesser desires. It's an appropriate word, in fact. This is the motive passion, trishna. So whenever that trishna comes, then what follows the trishna is an absorption in the object of thirst. Whether it's food, whether it's the object of sexual desire, whatever it is, whenever there's thirst, then there's a natural absorption in the object of the thirst. That is the natural sequel or corollary of the thirst. So here there's a spontaneous prema trishna. So there's a love thirst, and that love thirst causes complete absorption in the object of the thirst. So that is Krishna. Not only does it cause absorption in the object of the thirst, but it also causes absorption in the objects that are meant to bring pleasure to the object of the thirst. So in the commentaries, it's described, for example, the gopis may be making some garland for Krishna. They'll be completely absorbed in that garland also. That is meant for the pleasure of Krishna. This is called Prema Krishna, Paramavishata Bhavet, a complete absorption in the Ishte, the Ishtadev, Krishna, because of the love thirst. So a spontaneous love thirst that causes a complete absorption in Krishna, the Ishtadev. This is known as raga. This is the definition of raga. And talmayi yobavet bhakti. And that bhakti that is composed only of that raga, that is called as ragatmika bhakti. There's no other element to it. This bhakti composed only of that is called as ragatmika bhakti. So this ragatmika bhakti is desired by those who follow the path of Raganuga Bhakti. Ragatmikam anushritaye. That is the definition of Raganuga Bhakti, in fact, to emulate or to pursue that Ragatmika Bhakti. So this is the desire. So here, if you desire to live in Braja, yaditche ravasam Braja bhuvisaragam. If you desire to live in Braja with Ragatmika Bhakti, that's what the commentary is saying. So desiring to live in Braj with the Ragatmika Bhakti. So here, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and a couple other commentators, they bring up the idea of persons who live in Braja without desire for Ragatmika Bhakti. So in other words, Vaishnavas of other Sampradayas. So there are Vaishnavas of other Sampradayas. They also do Bhakti in Braj. Specifically, you can see members of Sri Sampradaya there. I've seen them at least. I don't know about other Vaishnava Sampradayas. Definitely the Sri Vaishnavas are there. But there are other Sampradayas that may also do Bhakti and Vrindavan Dham, but they don't have desire for Ragatmika Bhakti. This Ragatmika Bhakti means following the moods of Braja. Just like the goddess of fortune in Sri Sampradaya, they often are their Ishtadeva, Lakshmi Narayana. Some places also they have like Udupi Krishna in Udupi, South India. They have more opulent form of Krishna like Dwarkadish Krishna. Otherwise, Lakshmi Narayan, some places also Ramchandra's, Sita Ram Bhakti is there. In any case, when goddess of fortune, she was so attracted to Krishna Lila, especially the Ras Lila. She wanted to also enter into that Ras Lila. This is mentioned by Uddhava in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is also mentioned by the wise of Kaliya, also in their prayers to Krishna. So many places actually have mentioned. Goddess of fortune, she wanted to enter into the Ras Lila. But she wanted to enter into the Ras Lila as the goddess of fortune. She did not want to become a village girl like a gopi. She did not want to follow the moods of Braja. So even though she performed many austerities to enter into that Rasa Lila, she was denied entrance by Yogamaya because she did not embrace the mood of the gopis by which entry into the Rasa Lila is possible. So similarly, there are these Sampradayas who have as their Ishtadeva Lakshmi Narayana Sitaram. They have other Ishtadevatas. And they don't pursue the moods of Braja, Gopi Bhav, Gopa Bhav, etc. They don't pursue that. So they also may live in Braja, but they don't live in Braja with the desire for Ragatmika Bhakti. So because they don't live in Braja with the desire for Ragatmika Bhakti, they don't get that Ragatmika Bhakti. As simple as that. Krishna is such a perfect reciprocator that he does not give what you don't want. He reciprocates. And in accordance with the nature of your approach, then he gives the results. According to your meditation during sadhana bhakti, then that's what you'll get in your sadhya. That form, tat tat vapu, will manifest in reciprocation with that meditation during sadhana bhakti. Basically, sadhana bhakti is like unripe mango, and sadhya bhakti is ripe mango. There's complete coherence between the two. There has to be. So for members of the other sampradayas, this is the comment that's coming from Ajna Darpada, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So they don't get the Ragatmika Bhakti, even if they live in Braja. And why don't they get the Ragatmika Bhakti? Because they're not pursuing Ragatmika Bhakti. Simple as that. Yayam bhakti svanam bhavam tyajante kalevaram tam tamivaita kuntaya sadata bhava bhavita. Sadata bhava bhavita. According to what your mind, according to that bhava, which the mind is always infused in, then according to that, you get the results in the life hereafter and ultimate beatitude. So you cannot get the Ragatmika Bhakti unless you want the Ragatmika Bhakti. So that's the point coming out by our Acharya. So the other members of other sampradayas, they do not get this Ragatmika Bhakti. Now, if you're living in Braja with a desire for Ragatmika Bhakti, so there are many devotees who live in Vrindavan Dham. Maybe they were born there in Vrindavan Dham. So their whole life they've been hearing Shri Shri Radha Krishna Lila. So they also have desire to become like Radha Krishna's associates. They have desire for Ragatmika Bhakti, in other words. But just because you have desire for Ragatmika Bhakti, that doesn't mean you also get it. So this is the other point that Sri Raghunath Das Goswami is making. He wants to make this point. If you desire to live in Braja with the Ragatmika Bhakti, so the other sampradayas, they're already dismissed because they don't even have that desire for Ragatmika Bhakti. Suppose they develop desire for Ragatmika Bhakti, okay, fine. Then they're like others who are living in Braja with desire for Ragatmika Bhakti. And therefore, with perfect coherence with that desire, there's desire for rendering service to the divine couple, Shri Shri Radha Krishna. Yuva Dvam Dvam Tatsha Paricharitum Radhabhilashi. Abhilashi, that means they have a desire for Yuva Dvam Dvam Tatsha Paricharitum. Paricharitum means the service, 24 hours service, Radha Krishna directly. So that maybe there are other Sampradaya, they also have desire for Radha Krishna service, because again, Braja has its own Numan. So just by living in such a place, you may actually get desire for that. That happens actually. I have experience with that. I had zero Braj Bhakti consciousness when I came to Vrindavan for the first time in 2007, February. Zero. I didn't even realize that Braj Bhakti was the goal of our Krishna consciousness movement. Krishna was just like, Krishna was just like God, like a general conception of God. And just by being in Braja, my first trip, 2007, I was there only for 6 days. And I got a chance to associate with Ayya Prabhu, of course, that time. And all of a sudden, so many questions just appeared in my consciousness. What is Rag Bhakti? I don't even remember where that term came from. It was like a completely unconscious question. It just suddenly came in my psyche. What is Rag Bhakti? Who are the Braj Bhaktis? Because Braja has its own Numan, the Numan of Braj. It has its own Shakti, by which all these things become interesting and important for a soul who's connected to such a place. So you're in another Sampradaya, but you live in Braj. So now you also develop desire for Ragatmika Bhakti, or others are living in Braj and they have desire for Ragatmika Bhakti. You want to render service to the divine couple. Then what do you have to do? So therefore, Raghunath Das Goswami saying this verse, Tada. So if you have this desire, then Tada Tam Shrinu. You hear me. Tam Shrinu Mana. Oh my, you hear me. If this is your desire to live in Braj with Ragatmika Bhakti and to render service to the divine couple, then you hear me. Okay, what do you want me to hear? Mine is listening. Because he just said, hear me. Just like now, I'm giving class and you may be spacing out most of the class. But then I'll say, hear me. Then immediately you wake out of your slumber for at least 5-6 seconds. Oh, what does he say? Why he emphasizing on this point? Hear me, hear me. So every now and again you see the conversation like, hear me. Okay, what do you want to say? So you hear me. He's telling the mind, hear me. Like sometimes you have to tell the mind, hear this. This is important. Hear it. Okay, it'll listen for at least 10 seconds. We have up to 15 seconds. We've been trained very nicely by social media. We have up to 15 seconds before the mind goes out again. So hear me, and then countdown begins, 15, 14, 13, like this. So what do you want me to hear? What do you want me to hear? He says here, Sputam Prenam Nityam Smaranam. So he says here that you always and distinctively, Sputam means like with intentionality. Smara, remember. Nama, offer the obeisances. Nama here means namaha. You distinctly remember and offer the obeisances to Swarupam Shri Rupam Saganamiha Tasyagrajamapi. To Shri Swarup Damodar Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami, Tasyagrajamapi, his older brother, Srila Sanatana Goswami, and Saganam, and their associates, or the associates or members of the Chaitanya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sampradaya. You distinctly remember and offer obeisances to them, premna, with the affection, with the love. This is my instruction to you, mind. You hear me, this is my instruction to you. So what is the meaning here? To remember them, of course, that is clear, and to offer obeisances, that is clear enough. But specifically, it means to associate with their Sukirtan and their meditations, right? We've been stressing on this the whole time discussing this book, that the essence of all advice is to put, with the tongue, you should do Sukirtan, and with the mind, you should do Anushmriti. So how to do that? So for that, you have to follow the Brijvasis, right? Or those who have Anuraga for Krishna. Tishnam Braje, Tishnam Braje, Ta Anuragi Jana Anughami. Right? This verse is come. Tam Nama Rupa Charitati Sukirtananda. The third line says, Tishnam Braje, Ta Anuragi Jana Anughami. So Tad Anuragi Jana. Who are the Anuragi Janas? Anuragi Jana means the people, Janas, who have Anuraga for that Krishna. Ta Anuragi Jana. So who are the Ta Anuragi Jana? That is Sri Saru Damodar Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, etc. Anugami, we should follow those persons who have that Anurag for Krishna. So what it means to follow them? Well, if the advice is being given to us to do Sukirtan with our tongue and to do Anushmiti with our mind, so we have to follow those who do the Sukirtan and Anushmiti. They were giving us to hint how to do it. So Sri Saru Damodar Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, they do Sukirtan and they do Anushmiti. So to remember them and to offer obeisances to them is to remember their Sukirtan and to remember their Anushmiti. In other words, they've given so many literatures, not so many, but they've given some literatures. Saru Damodar's Sukirtan and Anushmiti we're getting through Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami was Shiksha disciple of Saru Damodar Goswami. When he came to Puri, as you can read in chapter 6 of the Anshalila, so Mahaprabhu immediately put Raghunath Das Goswami under the care of Saru Damodar Goswami. So Saru Damodar Goswami's Kirtan and Anushmiti we're getting through the mouth of Raghunath Das Goswami. So he's not put his name here. Raghunath Das has not put his specific name here. Oh mine, you hear me. But he said, you hear Saru Damodar, but we're getting Saru Damodar's Kirtan and contemplative life through the mouth of Raghunath Das Goswami. Sri Rupa Goswami, he's done so much through Kirtan also in his many books. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Ujjvala Nilamani, these are like tattva books. So this is to help us to enter into understanding of their Kirtan and of their meditations. But he's given so many books of just pure Kirtan, like Stavamala, for example. So many books he's actually given, where he's sharing his own Kirtan, his own meditations of Radha Krishna Lila. So we should remember that. We should offer obeisances to that Kirtan. And that way we learn how to do Kirtan and we learn how to contemplate. So interestingly enough, I was looking for this quote, but I didn't spend enough time, and I didn't have enough time this morning to find it. But Srila Prabhupada says that to live in Braja, Ayanja Prabhu himself was fond of quoting this also. He says to live in Vrindavan Dham means to study the works of the Goswamis. That's what Prabhupada writes in one purport. I think it comes to CC. I'll look for the quote later. But he says to live in Vrindavan Dham means to study the works of the Goswamis. And then he starts listing some of the works of the Goswamis. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Ujjvala Nilamani, Stavamala, Stavavali. He starts mentioning Brihabhavatamrita, etc. So many works he begins mentioning. And then he says, and so many others. That's how he ends the sentence. After giving a list, and so many others. So to live in Vrindavan Dham with the Ragatmika Bhakti, or with the desire for Ragatmika Bhakti, and to render service, the desire to render service to the divine couple, then you should distinctly remember with love and also offer the obeisances with love. The associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, these three are being particularly brought to the fore. And that way we shall live in Vrindavan Dham. So the idea here is that, final point you could say in this regard, well, why does someone have to follow these particular personalities? Because they're followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Is that the reason? So part of that is the reason, of course. If we appreciate, because in the last verse we heard that we should understand that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna. Anta Krishna Bahir Ghoram. Jiva Goswami composes verse. Inside he is black color, Krishna. But outside, Bahir, he is Ghoram, he is golden color. Because Rabha Bhava Stuti Duti Subalitam. We heard this yesterday. Krishna Sarupam Namami. Obeisances to that Krishna Sarupa who is adorned with the Bhava and Duti, the heart and halo of Shri Radha. So you have that conviction that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna. So he is Krishna coming to distribute himself. Krishna tried to distribute, himself and the rasas of Braja in his own lila. That was actually part of his Leela. According to Kaviraj Goswami's, if you read the beginning of the Adi Leela, chapter 4, he says that Krishna himself has an internal purpose and external purpose for doing his Leela. Krishna, not Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We often speak of this verse that I'm about to quote. It's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire, but actually this is Krishna's desire. His internal purpose, prema rasa niryasya karite asadina, is to taste the prema rasa of the Brijvasis. His external desire, rag marg bhakti loke karite prachara, is to distribute the path of rag marg by which the jivas can also taste these Braja rasas. So according to Kaviraj Goswami, this is the internal and external desire of Krishna himself. But Krishna felt himself not successful in his work of distribution. And so again, he's come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's external purpose was to distribute Brajarasas. And he does so through the Yuga Dharma. So Krishna has taken the position of the Yuga Avatar. He said, step out of the way, homie. I need to do something that I couldn't do perfectly well in my own Lila. And so he distributes the holy name himself. So the holy name given by Krishna's hand is special. As Kaviraj Goswami also points out, Krishna takes the holy name, or Yuga Dharma, and he also takes the Braja Prema, and he has, he wove the wreath. One thread is Prem, Braj Prem, other thread is Nam. And then he created a garland in this way. And then after creating the garland, he gives it to the world. Kaviraj Goswami is giving a stroke like this. So if you understand, if you accept this position, many people do not accept, but if you accept that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself coming to distribute himself, and the rest is a Braja, then naturally you have to accept Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's distribution of mercy. Otherwise, how can you know that reality? And now, otherwise, it's not possible. And his associates through whom he is distributing himself, then you would have to, one would have to take the mercy from them. I'm thinking of the verse, Atapite Deva Padam Bhujadvaya Prasada Lesha Anagranita Evahi. Janati Tatvam Bhagavan Mahimno, Nachanya Eko Picharam Vichanvan. This is from Brahma Stuti. So in Brahma Stuti, this verse is saying, what is that? Atapite Deva Padam Bhujadvaya Prasada Lesha. Only if you get a little drop of mercy are you able to understand the Bhagavan Mahimna. Bhagavan Mahimna means the glories of Bhagavan. Now, Chanya Eko Picharam Vichanvan. Even if you study Vedas for thousands of verses, you will not understand the Bhagavan Mahimna without a little drop in the mercy of the Lord. So similarly, this Ragatmika Bhakti, it cannot really be captured or understood without the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this age of Kali. And specifically without the mercy of his associates who have taken that mercy and then given it in digestible sizes by which we can if even from Mahaprabhu himself, if we had to take directly, short of like just touching him or being looked upon by him, that's the easy method. If you take birth in Gaur Leela, then he just glances at you or he like hugs you and you get prema. That's best. That's definitely best. We won't argue with that. Just like the story is there, Ancha Leela, their one fisherman is there. So he's he's catching fish in the middle of the night. So Mahaprabhu went into one of his ecstasies in the middle of the night. And he was meditating on Krishna, on Jalkeli Leela. The Jalkeli Leela, Jalkeli Leela means the water sports pastime. Mahaprabhu goes into this deep meditation and he just jumps in the ocean thinking it's Jamuna, and he decides to just go into Samadhi while he's in the ocean. So it's basically like he just fainted in the ocean. Sometimes going underneath the waves, sometimes above the waves. He's just lost in the Jalkeli Leela. So while he was gone in this devotional absorption, so the one fisherman was there. He was, fishing for fish in the middle of the night. So he caught one golden fish he saw. And then it like touched him. The fish touched him. He just realized the person. But the fish touched him, and when he got touched, immediately he became ecstatic. But he thought he was haunted by a ghost. So in the middle of the night, when Mahaprabhu's associates were looking for Mahaprabhu, Sarup Damodar, Ramananda, everyone was looking for him. They're running here and there. So they finally saw this fisherman on the bank. He was like, Hare Krishna, like screaming and yelling. And they're like, okay, he definitely associated with Mahaprabhu. So they go and ask him, hey, have you seen Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? So the fisherman said, no, I have not seen him. But because he couldn't recognize Mahaprabhu, because often if you read Ancha Lila, when Mahaprabhu will go into ecstasy, the bodily transformations were outrageous. And one of the transformations Mahaprabhu was undergoing while he was in the waters was his limbs, stretched. Like his limbs became, like, how do you say? I don't know how to describe it, like severed at the joints. And they were being only held together by the skin. So he was like huge and kind of perhaps looking somewhat deformed. And so the fisherman knew Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he couldn't recognize him. So he didn't know that this was Mahaprabhu. So describing them, they said, no, this is Mahaprabhu. We assure you, this is not a ghost. So Damodar said, don't worry, I'm an exorcist. I can free you from the ghost. Huh? So that way he made the guy calm down a little bit. And then he said, actually, you got Christian prema. So that is the best method. Get touched by Mahaprabhu, get his glance, get embraced. That is the best method. But if you don't get that method, and you have to hear only from Mahaprabhu's words, so we are Kali Yuga Krishnas, what can we understand? So those words have been broken down into further digestible baby, bite sizes for us through his associates. So if you want that Ragatmika Bhakti, the mind here, Raghunath Das Goswami is telling his mind that you must get that baby food from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates. Then you can get that Ragatmika Bhakti. Otherwise, very difficult. I think in the commentary, it is not denied that Ragatmika Bhakti may be possible for those who are exclusively devoted to Krishna. But in the age of Kali, it will be extremely difficult, if not almost impossible, without the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I feel that they have given some level of consolation, maybe Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his commentary. Although most Gaudiya Acharyas don't give any chance. As without Mahaprabhu's mercy, there's no chance you will develop Ragatmika Bhakti. And without Mahaprabhu's associates, then how will you be able to get Mahaprabhu's mercy? So he's telling his mind to take shelter of the words and the contemplation, Sukirtan and Anusmriti, of these associates of Mahaprabhu. Then only you can get that Ragatmika Bhakti, which is based on you doing Sukirtan and you doing Anusmriti also yourself. So we have to learn from the great souls who are doing that. In this way, we can get it. Otherwise, we cannot get it. So in this way, in these first three verses, he's Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, as we discussed the general structure in the first class. So here in these first three verses, we're hearing about if someone has got a little ruchi for Krishna Bhakti, what are they to do with that ruchi in order to grow it? If they're qualified for Rag Bhajan by a little bit of ruchi, now that your ruchi has to be exalted, ruchi here does not mean ruchi bhakti, the stage of ruchi bhakti. That ruchi doesn't mean here the stage of ruchi bhakti. Ruchi here means that somehow or other, in the course of hearing Krishna Lila from sadhus, a reflection of the love of what the siddhas has come on your heart, which is crystal-like. And just as the crystal takes on the qualities of the objects that it associates with, so having associated with the love of Krishna's associates through hearing Krishna Lila, so one of the qualities have stuck, so to speak. That is your ruchi. So now you have that little bit of ruchi. How do you grow that ruchi? So in first three verses, we've heard how that ruchi is to be grown. So now, again, if we have not discovered that ruchi, these instructions do not have full relevance, but they have some relevance for us also because we know that this is our goal. At least we've heard enough to appreciate that this might be our goal. And so they have some value even for us. Our ruchi is not yet taking birth, but even though our ruchi is not there yet, ajata ruchi, still we derive much value from hearing these instructions to the mind, by which we can understand a template by which we are to grow ruchi effectively when the ruchi becomes more or less clear to us. So having discussed the qualification for growing ruchi in the first three verses, now in the next three verses, he will give obstacles to the development of that ruchi and rag bhajan. So we'll stop there. Let's see if anyone wants to say anything. So I thought I'd go a little quicker, but so Sham Gopi said, I remember you saying many years ago when you went to Braj, some devotee asked you, what did you see? And you said, Ayanja Prabhu. And they asked you again, no, I'm asking, what did you see? You again said, Ayanja Prabhu. And this devotee was confused as if you aren't not able to understand the question. So I'm thinking of this story when you are talking about living in Braj with Ragamika devotee. Yeah. So if you live in Braj, ta anuragi jana, anughan. So you should follow the anuragi jana, ta anuragi jana. And so that means, of course, the siddhas that we hear about in the sacred texts and also in the prayer manuals of these great souls. And it also means ideally a living soul. There's one other point I forgot, and now your question brings it up. Here in the verse, I totally spaced out this point. And so you see here the first line. Yadicher abhasam brajabhuvi saragam pratijanu. So pratijanu means birth after birth, the meaning of pratijanu. So why birth after birth? Because in order to bring the ruchi to the right mark, that may take many births. So for devotees, our only desire should be the association of ta anuragi jana, birth after birth, by which we can go on cooking our, and actualizing our potential. This is actually the goal of Krishna consciousness in one sense. Even from beginning all the way up to perfection, this is the goal. That we can have the association of Rasik Vaishnavas or the ta anuragi janas. This is the goal. Why birth after birth? Devotees, we are not salvationists. Salvationists, they want to get liberated, back home, back to God in this one lifetime. And honestly, to be fair, that does sound kind of nice if I'm being 100% honest. But it's not nice if I can't get the love that is the very ideal, or the very ideal that gives my life meaning. If meaning is there only in this particular embodiment of love, then without that I cannot be happy. There will be no Atma Supersidati. Bhakti Vishrama Manava Maharaj, I've mentioned this before in the class. I heard he was in Chicago one time. And so some devotees were talking, at this point was coming about going back home, back to Godhead immediately or after many lifetimes. And Bhakti Vishrama Maharaj just made a comment. He said, I don't care how many births I have to take to get what I want. And, he's quite eccentric and, kind of weird from, if you're looking from just externally. But that comment touched my heart so much when he said it. I didn't even have the full context, but he was just like, I don't care how many births I have to take to get what I want. So this is a mood, this is a spirit on those in the path of Rag Bhajan, that we need to get our bhakti to the right mark for the pleasure of Krishna. So let me take birth after birth. But if I have to take birth again, let it be in the association of the ta anuragi jana. Otherwise, it's very hard to cook the ruchi, so to speak. I had to cook on a different stove here in Bhakti Center the other day. So the fires are all weird and different. So I put the pot on one, what do you call it? Like a light thing or whatever. And I lit it, and the fire was coming out just like this tiny little, it was very small. So I was thinking like the whole stove was like that. So I was like, okay, it should still work. So I had the pot. I cook all the time here in New York because I can't do the gruel here. And then cooking, when I want to cook fast, they just make gruel. Everything gruel. So I can't do the gruel every day. Every day is a little bit much. So and Ipsy also, the oatmeal gruel is okay. I don't actually mind the oatmeal gruel every day in the morning. That is okay. But then there's a gruel for the morning, gruel for the evening, gruel for lunchtime also. It's a little bit too much. So I end up having to make many things for myself here because I can't do gruel every day. It's just too much. So sometimes I'm making paneer, sometimes making different things. So I don't have to do the gruel. So I'm just making something evening time here. But the water, I was trying to boil the water. It was not boiling. It was on the thing for like 15, 20 minutes. The water was not boiling because the fire was too low. So I tried another eye, and then the fire was much stronger there. It worked. So like that, in order to cook our ruchi, this is what I'm saying here. Then you need the fire of the ta anuragijana. They like the fire that can cook the ruchi and bring the preparation to the right mark. So this desire we should have birth after birth. And yes, so my favorite place in Braj is in the association of such devotees that can cook my devotion, so to speak.
Jaya, quick question. Just playing the devil's advocate here. A lot of devotees would say Srila Prabhupada is our example of a Ragatmika devotee, and he dedicated his life to preaching, book distribution. All his classes were usually quite on the level of you're not the body, you should serve Krishna, he's God. So why don't we just follow his example in order to attain Ragatmika Bhakti in Braj? And it's interesting because like Prabhupada does insert, ideas of Raganuga Bhakti in his books, but it's often, even when he talks about Raganuga Bhakti and NOD, the example he uses is you can get it from Mangalarti without, spontaneously. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on this, because it seems like Prabhupada wants us to get there, but by his own words and actions, he may have, how do I put it? He didn't establish it as high of a thing as it is for some reason. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
for sure. Here's my answer to that. For argument's sake, you can argue anything. That is the speciality of argument. That is the speciality of logic. So Sridhar Goswami, he denies dry logic in the first chapter of BRS because he said the nature of logic is that you can establish one point and then establish its opposite if you're a little bit more clever. That is the nature of logic and argument. So for argument's sake, you can say anything. But the real question we have for the person who's arguing is that, do you feel that inside? Do you feel like a Ragatmika Bhakta inside? For argument's sake, you may defeat my point. Maybe I'm making some point. You're a little bit more clever than me. So you defeat my point also. Even I have the right point, but I don't know how to establish it because I'm not Uttam Adhikari. So the Uttam Adhikari, he's very expert in Shastra Yukti Chanipuna. He is expert in Shastra Yukti, but I am not Uttama Adhikari. Maybe I'm Madhyama. So I have Shraddhavan. I'm qualified by great faith, but I don't have full Yashastra Adhishu. I don't have the Shastric power to establish my point. So you're a little bit more clever than me. You defeated my point of argument. Srila Prabhupada this, okay, fine. We accept your point. So I have a question for you. Inside, do you feel like Ragatmika Bhakta when you're distributing books? Are you talking to people about Krishna? Are you talking to people about stress? What's going on inside? That is a question. Ragatmika Bhakti means what's happening inside. What are your contemplations when you do japa? What are your contemplations when you're walking in the street and you're just alone with your mind? What's going on there? That time you were singing the songs of Vidyapati, Chandidas, Sri Jaya Dev Goswami, the 6 Goswami, you're singing those songs in your mind? What's going on there? You ask yourself the question. So if the answer is coming that, no, I am not thinking like that, then it is not enough then. Whatever you're doing, you're preaching this and the other, then it is not enough. You have to ask further questions by how you can become Ragatmika Bhakta inside. You need further inquiry. I always quote this verse, that until your investigation must continue up to this point, the rahasya means prema bhakti, the prema of the Ragatmikas. So until you're really experiencing that from inside out, then tattva jignasunatmana, then you have to go to the guru and ask about this. You have to keep inquiring. So their argument is that their argument is like an outside in part. By doing these activities, then the effect will come inside. That is basically the logic of the argument. So I just said to that, okay, has the effect come inside? Simple. No, it's not come yet, but I'm confident it will come. Okay, carry on. There's no problem. I have no argument against that. But I'm not personally satisfied with that. I feel that my contemplative life needs to be a little bit better. So I'm going to inquire further. So don't disturb my investigation. I'll not disturb your investigation. If it is ended there for you, and you are satisfied that by these external activities, insight will come sooner or later, and that's how, as far as your inquiry has led you to, then we have no argument there. But my investigation is still ongoing. My investigation is still ongoing because I do not feel like Brijbasi inside. When I'm alone with my mind, I do not sing the songs of Vidyapati or Sri Gita Govinda. My mind doesn't spontaneously go there. It goes elsewhere to non-Krishna things also, or mostly. So that's how I would deal with that. Otherwise, for argument's sake, you can argue anything. I could also argue Prabhupada came to America as a Ragatmika Bhakta inside first. And then these are all just expressions of his devotion. So how did he get that part? So in this way, as like Mandimas, they'll go on arguing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. There'll be no end to this argument also. So that is why it's one of the types of prajalpas. There's no end to it. That's how I would deal with this particular question.
Thanks. Very energy giving.
Okay, I think Athena has something I saw maybe. Let's look here.
Hare Krishna. My first one's a little bit nuanced, but I guess if Ragatmika Bhakti is just spontaneous love and spontaneous devotional service, why does it have to look a specific way? So why do you have to live in Braj? And I know you mentioned Narada Muni in the beginning, and then couldn't you say that the Brajvasis and like say the gopis had Ragatmika Bhakti as they had spontaneous love? Not that Ragatmika Bhakti is exactly like their spontaneous love. Like it's just an example. Why does it have to be that specifically?
Why does it have to be that? So what is that again? Living in Braj.
What I got, that Ragatmika Bhakti is very specific, means you have to live in Braj, and it's the spontaneous love specifically of like the gopis. Whereas couldn't you just say if spontaneous love is spontaneous love, why does it could look in so many different ways? Why does it have to look specifically? Or what I'm getting is that Ragatmika Bhakti is the spontaneous love of like the gopis and the Brajvasis. Am I convinced properly? I guess
so it's these English terms that create so much confusion. So you're using the word spontaneous love, and like anyone can have spontaneous love. So you see how the word is defined, and then you have to use it appropriately. So the word is Ragatmika Bhakti. It's defined in a very particular way, very specific way. So that way we've already given definitions in the class, how Ragatmika Bhakti is defined. So this Ragatmika Bhakti is defined in relationship to the Brijbasis. Their Bhakti is called as Ragatmika Bhakti. And they're literally like forms of that Bhakti. So it's not like it's the Brijbasis and then they have that Bhakti, but they're literally forms of that Bhakti. You know, if that Bhakti were to take a form, then it is the Brijbasis. So they are forms of that particular type of love. And so this term, as it is used in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, is very specific in relationship to the Brijbasis. So having defined it in that way, then you have to, you think about the word in that particular context. Now, why in Braja? Because there's coherence between the love, the object of the love, and the environment in which the love is expressing itself. All these things, every day has coherence in spiritual life. So Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojan, for example. Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan, that all has to have coherence also. So we say Sambandha is Krishna, we say Abhideya is Krishna Bhakti, and we say that the Prayojan is, Braj Bhakti, for example. So this thing, they all line up. Not that your metaphysics is one thing, your practice is another thing, completely incompatible with the Sambandha, again, and then your goals are another thing. No, everything is having coherence. So there's a coherence between the object of devotion and the vessel of the devotion. the devotion itself and the environment in which the devotion is expressing itself, and you sort of in its fullest glory. So we mentioned that also in the beginning part of the class, in reference to the whole Ratha Yatra Lila, that it is Krishna in Dwarka, and Radha is meeting Krishna in Kurukshetra. So it's like Dwarkadish Krishna meeting the Brijbasis. So there she's saying this is not an appropriate environment for the fullest expression of the limit of Braj Prema, the limit of our love. It cannot express itself in this particular environment to its fullest extent. It requires an environment. And the environment itself is also not different from that substance. So see, in the material world, because of dualistic thinking, we make separation between the forms and the environment, etc. There's duality there. But when we're speaking about the spiritual environments, there's non-duality there. Right. So this is a huge topic. It's taken up in the Bhagavad Sandarbha of Jiva Goswami quite elaborately. But Vrindavan Dham, the Brijbasis, even Krishna's paraphernalia, they're all manifestations of his Swarup Shakti. They're all manifestations of himself. So wherever you find Krishna, then you'll find Vrindavan Dham there, his associates. They're all, I used to say like this last year a lot, or 2 years ago, I was saying like this a lot. Just like our form has eyes and ears and nose and mouth. So wherever we go, our eyes, ears, mouth, all that comes with us. Thankfully, otherwise it'd be really, really weird. So in a similar way, Krishna's form is composed of Vrindavan Dham, Brijbasis, etc., etc. So wherever Krishna goes, his whole form comes with him. They're not different from his Swarup. And so all these have coherence: the love, the environment, the object of the love, the vessel of the love. They're really kind of one category. They're like different aspects of one tattva, one reality, or one category. So in the spirit of wanting to enter into that non-dual region, so the desire for Braj Bhakti, or this desire for Braj Vas, is a particular indispensable element of our psychic training if we want to enter into that world. So therefore, our Acharya is saying, Tishnam Braja, live in Braj. And they comment, living in Braj is ideal. And if you can't live in Braj practically, for whatever reasons, then you live in Braja in your mind. So they're giving this slight leeway there. But what does it mean to live in Braj in your mind? That is a question that is definitely worth pursuing, because I know the devotees always say, if you just live in Braj in your mind, well, what does that mean on a practical level? But in any case, this is an indispensable part of our training, our psychic training. Remember, the sadhana is the sadhya in an unripe form. So all the elements that will be there in the ripened form of bhakti is there in our sadhana. It has to be there in our sadhana. So this is part of the psychic training. It has to be in Braja. Why? Because Braja is part of that form of the love of God that we're pursuing. It is an indispensable element of it. There's no duality there.
Thank you. That was a really wonderful explanation. Then I'm just going to, my question said in a different way. Then you have Gauga Bhakti, and then you have spontaneous love. Or
yeah, so the word spontaneous love can refer to anyone who's attained Bhav Bhakti. You can call that love spontaneous. All right. So Narada Muni also has spontaneous love. The Pandavas, they also have spontaneous love. Prahlad Maharaj, he also has spontaneous. They all have spontaneous love because their consciousness naturally flows towards God. So that, in that sense, it is spontaneous love, but it's not Ragatmika Bhakti.
Yeah. Okay. And there's no term. It's just called spontaneous love then. That's just what it is.
Yeah. Usually the term is just used as Bhav Bhakti, or, they translate it sometimes as spontaneous love. Sadhya Bhakti, that is the most generic term for it, Sadhya Bhakti. But then within Sadhya, there are all these different varieties. And one of the varieties is Ragatmika Bhakti.
Thank you. And then my next question was, if I'm curious, if the other sampradayas don't see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Krishna, then who do they think the Yuga avatar is in Kali Yuga?
I don't know. In Srila Sridhar Maharaj's commentary, not Prabhupada's godbrothers, the Sridhar Maharaj of the Bhagavad commentator, he takes the Yuga avatar as Krishna himself. if you're going to see his commentary, he says that the Yuga avatar is actually Krishna. So Krishna comes in Dwarka Yuga and also comes in Kali Yuga, but Krishna like Black Krishna. So we also say Krishna too, but we say Krishna inside but outside golden colored. And we have our pramanas from the Srimad Bhagavatam, because Gargamuni says that the Yuga avatars have 4 colors. And the color for Kali Yuga is yellow color, or Pita. The yellow color is coming. So we have our arguments by which we argue for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But so I don't know what all the other groups say. I know Sridhar Swami is saying Krishna in his commentary. And what others say, I do not know.
Okay, you don't what mana for how Krishna is in Kali Yuga, right? Because he left right at the start of Kali. At least that's what our scripture. So what do you have any idea? I mean, what's the pramana that Krishna is in Kali Yuga? Because we would even say he left. Krishna's manifestation. I mean, in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then the holy name, that's Krishna's manifestation. So what do they say? How is Krishna in Kali Yuga?
Siddhari says that he left in the Sandhya period. The Sandhya period means there's a transition period between each of the yugas. It's called the Sandhyas. So Krishna left in one of those Sandhya periods. So then he came again in Kali Yuga. Is that what they say? So you have to see, go and see Sridhar. We have to go look at Sridhar Swami's commentary, because he commented the Yuga avatar for Kali Yuga is also Krishna, which we are amenable to, but only partially, because we say he's Krishna inside, but outside he's golden color. So I don't know how they reconcile these things. That's actually an interesting question. We can go ask them. Hey, y'all believe in the Yuga avatars, right? So who is the Yuga avatar for? He will come as Kalki. That is another avatar though. Kalki is not a Yuga avatar. Kalki is it's time to clean house avatar. Permanently, clack, 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 and then starts the next Yuga. So he's not as called as Yuga avatar though. So who's the Yuga avatar for Kali Yuga, according to other sampradayas? It's a good question. I don't know how they answer this question. It's an interesting question.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Anyone else wants to say anything before we skedaddle? Okay. Prahlad Maharaj says the Lord is Tri Yuga, isn't it? Yes, in his prayers, he says because he is called as Chana avatar in Kali Yuga, he hidden avatar. And therefore, he's only known as Tri Yuga, or the Lord who appears only in 3 yugas. Because in the 4th Yuga, Kali Yuga, he's coming in a hidden form. So there's another pramana that the devotees like to use for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But in the 11th canto, Navyogendras clearly were asked about the Yuga avatars, their colors, their forms. And that time he also distinctly speaks of a Yuga avatar for Kali Yuga in Srimad Bhagavatam. So, and this way, of course, devotees, we argue for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But I don't know how other sampradayas argue. Maybe they say it doesn't appear. Just like when they were arguing, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Gopinathacharya having argument about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's divinity. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya actually was arguing that there is no avatar in Kali Yuga. I think that time. So Gopinathacharya, he quoted all these verses from Prahlad Stuti. He quoted this verse also, quoted another verse, arguing for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gargamuni verses. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was not compelled. So finally Gopinathacharya said, reason you don't understand is because you didn't get the mercy. That's why you don't understand. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is like, well, what is the proof that you got the mercy? And Gopinathacharya said, the proof is I know that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is God. That's the proof I got the mercy. So very unconvincing answer, but in any case, this is how they argued on this point. So maybe they say that there is no Yuga avatar. I don't know actually. It's an interesting thing. Okay, Siddha, maybe you have something on that, and then we can close.
Thank you, Prabhu. This point regarding that, which is we also hear in today's shloka, that one is ready to reside in birth after birth, and then you connected that to Bhakti Vishram Madhamara saying that I don't care how many births it takes for me to reach that goal. I'm ready to do the austerity of that. And at the same time, isn't the sadhaka supposed to feel anxiety that we don't know what opportunity we'll get in next lifetime of associating with sadhak, with other devotees and other similar-minded devotees who would be interested in pursuing this goal. And we also hear a lot from other from our seniors, like spiritual masters, usually that we want to go back to Godhead in this lifetime. So doesn't that bring anxiety in the sadhaka? Sometimes I feel about it, I think about it deeply. I feel like, hey, I'm not doing much. The goal is so far, like where one has to reach and where I am. And then it has been almost 10 years and still I barely made any progress, like a snail's pace. And you have a snail pace have to cross 10 miles or 50 miles, a marathon. It doesn't seem possible at all in this lifetime. So that makes one feel a little bit depressed also. Is it even possible at all? What have we set our eyes upon? It's like thinking about going to the moon, and it seems so impossible. So how does one two questions. One is that this point regarding whether we will receive the association of devotees or not. I guess Parikshit Maharaj also is anxious about it. That's why he asked that blessing. And second, how does one deal with that anxiety which comes in day to day, like that the goal is so big, so huge, and how am I able to reach that goal ever?
I imagine most devotees don't consciously deal with that anxiety at all. They've just already surrendered themselves to defeat and just carry on existence as is. But if we are to take encouragement from Krishna himself, Neha Bhikrama Nasrosti Prativaya Navitite, Swabam Api Asid Dharma Satarete Maratobaya. Sri Vishnu's comment to this section of the Gita, verses 40 through 45, 46, he says specifically is speaking of bhakti yoga, the nature of bhakti yoga. So there is no loss or diminution on this path. Basically, you can't lose. There are only degrees of success. Now, depending on how hard we're working, 1 unit degree of success, or it could be 100 units degrees of success. But this degrees of success, that's an encouragement to us. Now, nahi kayana krit kashtit durghatam tatagachati. In chapter 6 Bhagavad Gita also, Arjuna is having the same concern. I've left behind the material life to do the spiritual. But spiritual thing is so high, I'll end up like a riven cloud, no place here, no place there. I'll be finished. So there, Krishna says, for those who do the auspicious work, nahi kalyanakrit. For us, kalyanakrit means bhakti yoga. Then he says, you will not be overcome by evil. That's how Prabhupada translates it. There will be no obstacle for you. But it's a matter of slow degree, or, it's a matter of pace. So our pace may be very slow or may be very fast. But in this way, there's so many shlokas giving the encouragement. If we are having true anxiety about these things, that would be very good. That anxiety would help us to work harder to do the necessary tapasya required to get the thing that we want. So that's why I said I'd imagine most devotees don't have that much anxiety about it. That allows us to kind of do bhakti in a lackadaisical way. Prabhupada writes in the verse, Tvam Bhakti Yoga Paripavita Hisroja. I often like to quote this verse from 3.9.11. And he says that this Bhakti Yoga, which is a reference to Prema, Tvam Bhakti Yoga Paripavita Hisroja is a reference to Prema. He says this is not for the casual devotee. The casual devotee will not get this. So if we have a real anxiety about it, I would imagine that will cause us to, deepen our tapo divyam, putra kanyana satnam, by which we can come closer to our goal at a much faster pace. But I imagine most devotees, due to our ignorance, we don't have that much anxiety about it. And therefore, we allow ourselves to remain casual, Otherwise, a combination of anxiety and a high goal is a very good combination, actually, for working hard. Very good. What is the problem? That is a special anxiety, one that only a few people would actually have about it. I used to see Andrew, he had a lot of anxiety about it. He was often talking about going back home, back to Godhead in this one life. And he seemed to have lots of anxiety about it. And as a result of his anxiety, he was working really, really, really hard. His bhajan was like heavy because of his anxiety, his great anxiety to attain, Krishna. There's this one Prema Dwani where he's like that, back home, back to Godhead, ki jai. The sooner the better, ki jai. Like this. And So he had a lot of anxiety about that. That made him do his bhajan very deeply. So I would say if there was such an anxiety, that is a rare anxiety. It's such a benediction to one's life. And as far as dealing with the depression point, if Krishna's words are to be believed, that there's only degrees of success in the path of bhakti, then there shouldn't be too much depression. There should be anxiety, but not depression. And depression means, when it settles in, it demoralizes your faculties, so you can't do anything. So there won't be there, but there will be anxiety. That is okay. That is welcome. That is also appreciated. We have to just, Rajat Mishra, is it? We have to just surrender to Krishna. We should not bother of the fruit of bhakti. Well, it depends. I remember hearing Ajahn Prabhu, this is the last day of Kartik. And he said, we are fruit of workers because we want the fruit of prema. I always really appreciated that. Of course, we want the goal of life. Why we shouldn't be indifferent to it? We want the goal of life, but we want the goal of life for the pleasure of Krishna. If you hear that Krishna is satisfied by prema bhakti, and we are interested in pleasing Krishna, then we should be interested in prema bhakti. We're not against desires, right? What is the definition of uttam bhakti? I've been saying this a lot in the last month. Anya bilashita shunya, right? So other desiredness should be zero. Other desiredness should be zero. Other desires, that means there's a desire that is welcomed. What is the desire that is welcomed? That is the desire for bhakti itself. Commentators are quoting the verse, bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya. That bhakti comes from bhakti, so the desiredness for bhakti, that desire is wanted. That desire be made very strong. Just like people have desire for money or they have desire for sex in this world, very strong. Their whole psyche becomes filled with that only. So our desire for bhakti should be there. Not that we are indifferent to that. We are not indifferent. Especially in the path of Rag Marg, there is nothing like indifference. There's nothing like indifference except for towards the material things. And rag means the attachment. So you know about rag, because we have natural rag for the body, isn't it? So we know what is raga. So if you have raga for this thing, it is intense. It is not indifference. So we do care about this result for the pleasure of Krishna. We know that Krishna likes this thing most, so we will be interested in that. So how hard we would have to work then? If there is no desire, there will be no working hard. Try to understand. That's why our devotees have become casual, in fact. Most of the devotees in the movement, they are casual devotees because there's no strong desire for it. You understand? Without strength of desire, there will not be strength in practice. That is a fact. When desire becomes strong, even if it becomes anxiety level, then your practice will be coherent with that. It'll be very strong. So how do we get that desire? That question should come up. So then you associate with those who have the infection. The Prabhupada writes like this, that bhakti is as infectious in a good way as infectious diseases. And then he says, you catch the infection of the ruchi of the bhaktas. So that's how we get the infection. Then the desire becomes very strong. Then the tapasya will follow. And like this. So once it comes, it may take a little time to cook. It may take a couple of lifetimes to cook. So Krishna will protect us. Still, should we be in anxiety this one life? That is also very good. I don't see any problem there. I say the opposite. We have problem because we don't have enough anxiety, but we have anxiety about government takeover, like me. We have anxiety about, food shortages, gas prices going up, so much anxiety. And we keep adjusting our whole existence based on these new anxieties that keep coming up. Just like on the social media, some scary thing will happen and then someone will put in the comment, new fear unlocked. I saw this thing some time ago where it was a girl in Europe. They had like this slide that goes in a circle and it's like a water slide or something. But she got stuck in one part of the slide and didn't go forward and went backwards. And it looked kind of scary from the video. She was supposed to go forward, but didn't go forward, kind of like stopped and then started leaning back and then went back the way she came. And it looked super dangerous. So then someone put in a comment, new fear unlocked. I thought that was fun. So this is going on in the material world. We keep unlocking new fears. And we get anxiety about these things. But the anxiety about the state of our bhakti, we don't care. Completely indifferent. So I'm saying this anxiety is very good. This will be a welcome anxiety, actually. I'm getting anxiety about this, that, and the other thing. Well, let me get anxiety about this. I'm remembering one other thing here. Radha Damodar Lila, the book Radha Damodar Vilas is there. So there, I don't remember, it must be in the first book because I don't think I read the second one. There, Vishnu Jha Maharaj, he's talking to Prabhupada about some anxiety he's feeling for, his service. And there, Prabhupada says, this is very good. And then I think he gives the example of Mother Jasoda, where he said Mother Jasoda was always in anxiety about how to please Krishna. So he says, this is sacred anxiety, this is divine anxiety, this is wanted. So I said, this is very good. What is the difficulty? Depression is not very good. So we should not be too depressed if his words are to be believed. But anxiety is welcomed. Let anxiety come for the state of our bhakti. That shall maybe push us a little bit deeper out of the casual zone and the casual devotee. Okay, we want to finish here. I think we would have to ask these other people about I don't know if they believe in the Yuga Avatar or not, so therefore the rest of the questions I won't be able to answer unless we understand their premise. If they believe, so if since the Yuga Avatar is giving Yuga Dharma, they don't believe in the Yuga Avatar, do they believe in the Yuga Dharma? So all these questions we would have to ask them. I'm not sure. It's a very interesting question. Surrendering to the defeat, we should surrender to Krishna, not surrender to the defeatist mentality anyway, and then become casual devotees. We will be lost that way. Let us be in anxiety about. I'm already in anxiety about the government. I'm in anxiety about food shortage. I definitely don't want to go hungry, so I'm anxiety about that. I'm not anxiety about the gas prices so much, but they affect because I have to buy tickets to this place and that place. And I'm a simple guy, I literally subsist on donations. And I'm like, if the gas keeps going up, then ticket prices are going to go up. It's going to make things more expensive. So I get anxiety about that. So let me be in anxiety about the state of my bhakti. Let me be in anxiety about this. This is welcomed. That way I can work harder for my bhakti. We have Bullock Cart in the far. All right. Hare Krishna. We'll stop here today. Thank y'all for engaging me in Hare Katha a little bit and remaining my guardian angels. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll continue Mana Shiksha. Hare Krishna. Hare Ram.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Das Goswami Ki Jai. Haribo.